Episode
15.
15. I knew that. What is hypermobility, Jenny? Because we're sick of it.
Yeah.
No, wait, that's the topic today. We're not sick of it. What is it?
Well, it is a spectrum disorder. It ranges from joint hypermobility, which is where just your joints are affected. You can get joint pain, you can get loose joints, unstable joints, which can be symptomatic or asymptomatic. Basically, you can have pain or you don't. That's the lower end. You've got hypermobility spectrum disorder in the middle, which is like you've got the joint pain, you've also got some connective tissue issues.
What's connective tissue?
So connective tissue is anything that connects anything in your body. So you've got ligaments.
My tissues.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
They're like bogies.
You've also got connective tissue in your intestines and your organs. So you can have like digestive issues, heart issues, that kind of thing. And then you've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the extreme other end, hypermobility, EDS, which then means you basically have joint problems and connective tissue disorder. Like, you definitely have both, and they're symptomatic. That's not good. So you could be anywhere along the spectrum. Basically, it's very common, but it's very messy. Like they only reclassified hypermobility in 2017 because it was like, oh wait, loads of people seem to have this, and we don't know what we're doing.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Because there was no real definition for it, so it's very new. It isn't well defined, and it isn't well treated or diagnosed.
Well, it's hard to figure out as well because it's
Yeah.
not just like you have hypermobility, therefore everything kind of goes a bit wobbly.
Yeah,
It can be like joint specific or
And it could be one joint.
yeah.
You can literally have localized joint hypermobility, so your thumb does something weird.
Yeah.
That's it. Or your elbows, that's it.
Everyone right now is looking at their own thumbs going,
Is that
is
weird?
that weird?
That's
Can everyone do this? No.
yeah, so yeah, you can literally it's called peripheral joint hypermobility, is where just your arms and legs are affected, but nothing else, or your fingers and toes, compared to generalized joint hypermobility, where all of your joints are affected. So it's very broad.
Which type is it that you have?
I was diagnosed with joint hypermobility syndrome, but that no longer exists as a term. It's been reclassified to hypermobility spectrum disorder. So that's what I have.
Sure.
About 1 in 20 people have this.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's
I
quite
think it's
common.
more. Definitely think it's
Do you
more.
reckon?
But this is the thing, like hypermobility spectrum disorder is one step up from just joint hypermobility,
Oh, okay, right.
which some people could just have hypermobile joints. So there could be 1 in 20. That's about 20% of people. Nope, that's not incorrect. That's about 5% of people.
Yes. There we go. Good. Nice.
Jeez.
We're like.
So could have the hypermobility spectrum disorder, but more people could just have hypermobile joints. About 1 in 3,500 to 5,000 people have EDS. So that's, or HEDS, hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos. So that's far more rare.
Okay.
But yeah, like that complete opposite end, I do agree with Tom. I think a lot of people have some element of hypermobility.
Because people don't know, and for a lot of the population that don't exercise or do things,
Yeah.
maybe just get really sore all the time, or like can't
don't
walk and
know,
stuff like that. There,
Yeah.
could be, they might go and see 1 or 2 people about it, maybe, be like, oh, it's fibromyalgia, and just get told something with no investigation whatsoever. So,
Well, because as you say, like if they're reclassifying it and they're kind of rethinking about what it is, it's probably quite hard to diagnose or do tests for and stuff.
It is, because the joint stuff, we have something called the Baton score, which is a 9.
Just thinking bait and hook, bait and switch.
No.
Bait and score.
You start to stretch and then
Yes. Surprise!
you're not stretching anymore, you're broken now. Oh no. Anyway, where you just test a series of exercises. Can your thumb touch your wrist? Can your pinky finger go back to 90 degrees?
Nope.
Does your knee and your elbow extend past 180? There's a series of, I think, 9. And you need a score of 5 or 6 to be classified. But that tests only the joints.
I'm really competitive and I would not be able to get a 5. That's really nice.
But for EDS, you might have velvety, stretchy skin. So another thing that the doctor did to me was pull the skin on my neck to see how far it would stretch.
Oh, really?
Because
Like,
that's...
just
Yeah,
give it a
yeah.
yank?
And I don't have particularly stretchy skin.
Do you?
But that's a
No,
that's a
not even a
sign
wee bit.
of
different.
EDS. Yeah.
It's very different. A stiff fridge brick.
skin. You also could get like unexplained stretch marks if you've got EDS. That's a connective tissue sign. Very unexplained bruising on your skin, all this kind of stuff. And all these things aren't tested. It's just like, well, we'll observe you.
Yeah.
And maybe if you have these things, you might have hypermobility.
And then when they're like, oh, you do have it, they're like, oh, what do I do? And they're like, oh, we don't know.
No, yeah. Still figuring that bit out.
Yeah, we'll get there.
No, it's definitely, so many people don't know that they have it. Like, there's so often I've talked to people, like even just on calls and stuff, and they've been explaining what issues they're having and stuff. And they're like, oh, I'm going to the gym doing all this here stuff. And I would say that it was one guy a couple of weeks ago actually, says to him, can you put your palms down flat on the floor with like no warm up whatsoever? And he just did it on the call, like in front of me. He just went, what, that? And I'm like, yeah, like
that's one of the bait and
you know,
sword
it's
tests,
one of the ones that I'm like, do you ever find it hard to like get into any position ever? And he's like, no. And I'm like, could you straighten your arm out for me? And his arm like went way down, like to the point that it looked broken. And I was like, dude, you need to do a lot more strength work and mobility work. So
I just want to add a correction in. It was 20% of people, not 1 in 20.
Okay, there we go.
Hypermobility.
Yeah, 5%
just
or
checked my
20%.
notes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
awesome.
Good.
Continue.
I'll put a wee like, oh, that's me. I'll put a wee text thing.
Yeah.
Great. Good job, JP. Thanks,
It's a
Jenni.
podcast that should all be fact checked anyway. There's no chance that anyone ever says all the right stuff all the time, especially with things. I guess I would have said the baiting thing. I would have said there's 15 things in it, but I can't remember it all. When you said 9, I'm like,
No,
is it 9?
pretty sure it's 9. I don't think I wrote it down.
You just made a few notes, Jenni.
Just a couple. This is a lot of it I crossed out because I was like, don't go into that.
Go ahead.
Deliberately
and
don't say this.
Put it in green. Go ahead.
Go ahead and don't say that. Yeah, exactly.
So, with a lot of this, so that's a lot of the things that you notice or see or people talk about. But so for you, like when you were kind of discovering this or when this was brought to your awareness, like what were you experiencing or what was different for you in life that made you aware of it?
Well, basically, I kept hurting myself. And I was training martial arts at the time, a sport that you do tend to hurt yourself. You know, you get into very dodgy positions sometimes, and it was a contact combat sport. But I would hurt myself not in fights necessarily, but I would jump and I would then have to sit out for the rest of the class because I would have hurt my ankle too badly to continue, or my
Because
hip.
of the takeoff or the landing, or
Probably a bit of both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
the movement, the fast movement, and the bouncing and all this kind of stuff was just way too much. Whereas no one else seemed to sit out as much as I had to.
Okay.
And I can't remember though if there was anything in particular that led me to get a diagnosis. But I did have to have surgery on my ankle after many, many injuries to it, and it was like a keyhole surgery just to repair some damage. And I think it was after that someone had noticed in that process you should get checked for hypermobility. So it was mostly the injuries and the pain, because when you live with pain, you don't realize that everyone else doesn't. You just think that's normal.
Yeah.
And chronic pain is a symptom of hypermobility. Joint pain is the obvious one, but just general aches and pains. People with digestive issues, you have digestive pain. Heart pain, headaches and migraines are very common with people with hypermobility, and you're just like, that must be what everyone's feeling.
Interesting, yeah.
So
Isn't life awfully hard?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that bad.
yeah. Chronic fatigue is another hypermobility symptom, comorbidity, I should say.
Is some of that kind of linked because if your digestive system's impacted, that you're not getting as much?
It could be.
Nutrients and
Again,
stuff?
there's not too much solid answers out
right,
there.
okay.
But say you've got
Is
heart
that like
issues.
the best pun ever?
Because it's solid.
Not solid answers. Digestive issues, solid. No. Okay. Guess we're not going there in this podcast.
We never are going there.
I have the humor of a 12-year-old.
Just
Okay.
because this podcast is the number 2. Yeah, I'll sit in my stool here. It's fine. Carry on.
We're grown-ups.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Stool.
Fecal matter? What? No.
Maybe.
Right, okay.
Maybe
Sure.
the digestive issues, maybe the heart issues, they could contribute to the low energy, to fatigue, because those two things are very important to your energy.
I like imagine if all of your joints don't feel stable all the time, and you're walking around and you're basically like a shaking all the time. Your entire
Anxiety
body.
is a comorbidity.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like your body the whole time's going, I need to fight to stay upright.
I feel so uncertain.
Yeah, like
Basically,
it's a
yeah.
big deal. Like we are gonna probably be more lighthearted about this, and it's kind of I find helpful in that way
Totally.
to take it as that
I
approach.
don't know.
which-
My firm stance in this is make fun of Jenny as much as possible about the serious condition that she has. Yes, for sure, for sure.
It's something that we always refer to as a bendy Wendy in the
Yes.
group. So the two different ideas is a fridge brick, which is very much what I used to be. Jenny, bendy Wendy. JP's kind of in the middle somewhere.
But JP has some hypermobile
does.
tendencies if you look at his elbows. You get some funky elbows, but you'd maybe call that localized hypermobility.
Yeah. I did have a very high injury frequency
Yeah.
when I was training, but
'Cause-
also I was training a lot.
Like a madman.
Yeah.
And you were under fed.
Yeah.
Underfed.
Yeah.
But
Are
yeah.
there any pros to having hypermobility?
Well, speaking of
So-
poems, I wrote one for the podcast. No, I'm joking.
Poems?
Pros, because pros is it doesn't matter.
Over my head.
There once was a man from Lisbon.
That's a limerick.
That's a type of poem.
It is. But is that a type of prose?
I don't know.
Me neither.
I did a poem.
You did do it.
I did do a poem
Oh.
about Jenny.
No, you did a limerick about
A
me.
limerick about Jenny.
I'll go for
Same
it.
thing. Hang on. So talk, is there any pros?
Are there any pros? So,
Are there any pros? All right then.
OER. Are there any pros?
So I was saying to JP when I was going through my notes yesterday, I don't know if I was in a bad mood or if hypermobility just sucks, because I read the question that was going to be asked today, because we obviously plan these very well.
Thoroughly.
Are there any pros to hypermobility? And I was just like, no, there's not. Stupid. But you have a large range of motion without having to try. That's a the biggest advantage, I'd say, is that you generally don't need to do much, if any, flexibility work to hit what you'd class as normal positions. You can generally get into a lot of positions without having to do prerequisite flexibility work.
Yeah. 9 out of 10 times when I say I wish my squat looked like that, person is hypermobile. And it's just like, that's not fair. That's just, not fair. Shall we, we'll pause for a second for this
no.
Oh, this epic
I found
prose.
this. So, there once was a woman named Jenny. Her body was ludicrously bendy.
Oh, it's hey.
She'd trip in the street, grab strangers she'd meet. Her excuse was that she was just friendly. She lacked a lot of joint stability, which became quite the liability. She lifted some weights and learned how to brace, and now she's the queen of mobility.
Oh.
Building strength is quite easy. You don't even have to get wheezy. You see, Jenny is smart and pretends not to fart, but the smell makes us all quite queasy.
Is that because you digestive stuff? No.
Yes.
That was a Saturday I had off and I wasn't allowed to do anything. And I just
Yeah,
couldn't
wrote a
stop
poem.
writing limericks.
Wrote mean poems about me.
Yeah.
That started off really nice and then really went downhill. But a lack of proprioception and lack of coordination, clumsiness, is also a sign of hypermobility.
Yes. Which is a pro for everyone around them, because there was one time me and Jenny were standing in the street waiting to get picked up or something, and she just fell. She was just like, "Everyone okay? Is everyone okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, Jenny, I'm fine." What happened?
Like Jess from
New
that show.
girl?
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Just
Yeah, it was
stand
very
up.
much that.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh dear. But yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. You know, it depends. Like you can get not lucky. I don't know, but if you fall into a sport with hypermobility at a really young age, that's
You
like a
probably
full
will
range of
fall
motion.
because you very
Like that.
It's
clumsy.
very clumsy, yeah. But like you've got all that access to range of motion, and if you start strengthening from a young age, like you can end up, being an incredible
Yeah.
accidental athlete because.
Do you mean
of
like
that.
doing a sport like ballet or gymnastics, or do you mean that they'll, like, if you get into those, they might reinforce some of the issues that are there?
Well, it would depend how they're trained. If they're trained in a really hardcore, like if you break then go away mode, then yeah, it's going to be a bad thing. But if you get a good coach and stuff that understands how to build them up properly, and they are shown, you know, the basic stuff of animal movements and stuff as a kid, and get them strengthen all their ligaments and tendons as much as possible at that young age, like they can end up being pretty cool. You know, being able to do stuff, which Jenni can do.
It's a big advantage in, like, I mean, people are pushed to be hypermobile, which you can do. You can become hypermobile in your joints through very excessive stretching, and gymnasts and ballet dancers and that kind of profession would push for that. So having hypermobility as your starting point is a good thing, because in some ways it's easier to build strength and flexibility. Like if you have the space to move into, it's kind of can be easier to build strength on top of that rather than having to create the space first and then build the strength. So it definitely can be an advantage in those professions. I meant to look up the stats for hypermobility in children, actually, because most children, I'm going to say with no scientific backing whatsoever, have hypermobility. I've seen it's so much more common in children, I'll say that. And then you tend to grow out of it. If you're still presenting symptoms in your teens, that's when it's like, okay, this is more of an issue.
Sure.
It's very common to see children with hypermobile joints without having any sort of syndrome or beyond.
And they wouldn't have the strength background and stuff because they're just kids.
It's because they're young, they bounce back.
Yeah.
Kids bounce if you drop them. Honest. Tried it twice. Both kids. Both fine. I did not. I just want to put that out there.
This will not age well.
So, on the flip side, so if we think about, training, it can give you opportunities for movement.
Yeah.
That's a pro. And if dealt with in the right way, it can definitely be an advantage to be able to do certain things. Because there's some things that Jenni can do that I'll never, ever be able to do. I could stretch for the next 10 years and still never be able to do some of the things that Jenni can do. I know.
Okay.
What would we say are the cons of it?
Let me get my other set of notes up.
In terms of training, are we talking about?
Yeah, we'll go training.
Because we've mentioned some of maybe the life stuff, but the high risk of injury is very prevalent.
Yep, pain in the backside.
And pain in the backside is also none. Because the low strength, low stability, lack of control, you're a lack of proprioception, you're very likely to injure yourself if you move quickly, even if you move slowly sometimes. So there's a lot of self-preservation that you have to be much more careful than everyone else, I'd say, when you're training, because otherwise you could put yourself in a bad situation very quickly. Whereas you're trying to keep up with everyone else, and you're like, oh, why can't I do that? It's like, well, you're starting from a little bit further back in strength training, a CrossFit setting, even running or something like that. But yeah, maybe ballet or gymnastics, if you're trained right, you could be starting from a further ahead point. But I think for most part, you're starting from a further behind point.
Yeah, I agree. And it just really drives home the importance of building a good foundation, which everybody should do anyway. And again, it's just, if you're hypermobile, you don't get away with it.
Yeah, there's less wiggle
so
room.
the same, there's less wiggle room. The same might be that someone else who doesn't have hypermobility might get away with stuff for like a year if not doing it right, whereas the person with hypermobility immediately will get caught out, which, is it really a con? Because if you address it in the right way, it might be like, oh, here, hang on, I need to be careful. And then you have a great year, and then that person that doesn't have hypermobility got injured that year later, you're able to keep on making progress.
So you were forced to slow down, which was actually
a good
much
thing.
more beneficial in the long run.
Which is something that you essentially did, with your own training. You brought things right back and to jumping really gently on small height things. If you had seen all the stuff that you were doing in the past, I always like to say, because you did always look great, muscle-wise and everything, you were like, this girl's strong, but you had to scale things back and make things a bit easier. And everyone, like, from the outside looking out, is going like,
why is she jumping onto a 10-kilo plate instead of a box?
Yeah, because some people would see you sometimes when you would have tried those things, it's like, but she could do that before. But it's like, you just weren't fully ready for it yet. And when you really went all in on it, like the stuff you were able to do, I always like to say, like over a 7-year period, that you started doing backflips and stuff, like, and things that, like, incredible stuff that It's like, how did you go from not being able to walk around the place to being able to do that? That's incredible, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause I love sharing your story with people, you know, because it's something I can't relate to. But knowing you, and anytime someone's asking me about stuff, it's like, Jenni, have you ever heard of Jenni? Jenni, you know, it's like, you've no idea how good things can be.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at it as it's not a race, right? You know, it's going to be with you for a lifetime. So let's see. Okay, well, if I've got a lifetime to work on this, what's a smart way to progress?
Yeah, yeah. There's a quote, I want to say it's Tony Robbins, who says people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Mm-hmm. Churchill. All quotes are Churchill.
Probably was Churchill. Tony Robbins quoting Churchill.
Cons for someone that doesn't train. So something I have found with people that don't exercise regularly with potential hypermobility is that sitting postures, being in positions for long periods of time because the muscles aren't being strong the way they're supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
Really bad joint aches, headaches, things like that, just because everything just is working so much harder. So that's definitely something I've noticed for people that aren't active.
Well, that's something we talked about is you'd much rather the pain of like trying to work on it and getting hurt while training because it was a chosen injury rather than just like, why is that sore?
I know life is hurting me.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because there's people I know with hypermobility, whether they know it or not. And life just hurts them.
Yeah.
Because it is hard. And when your joints aren't moving right and stuff. But they're not even trying to get stronger. Just because they don't want to. Everyone's free to do whatever they want. But like it is maybe harder to watch when I see the pain that they find themselves in. And I find myself in pain frequently as well. But I've come so far. And you've known me for 10 years, Tom. You haven't maybe seen where I started, but the difference is crazy. And I can't help but think sometimes, what if I didn't do that?
Oh, yeah.
Because, the posture really, really sort of creeps up on you and your joints. They do start to close down and like different parts of you stiffen up to protect the joint. Like instead of the joint being stable, the muscles tighten up to protect it. So you can end up feeling super stiff and tight and actually feeling inflexible. But that's because you've started from this place of instability and too flexible.
Yep.
So if people out there who are not working on their strength can find themselves in this weird position of being inflexible, but also too flexible at the same time.
Well, because then the reaction is, okay, well, I feel stiff, so I'll stretch. But really what you should do is, well, I'm stiff, so I should get stability. And then that unlocks your movement.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like what you want to do because the stretching will feel like it's helping you at the time.
It feels nice.
Yeah, and you'll be naturally great at it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like, I'll just do some of that yoga. Do you struggle to downward dog? Because I don't. And you'll just boom, straight into it. So there was a stage where we stopped you doing yoga for a while after training sessions and just did lunges and worked on strength stuff at the end of every session. So everybody else would be doing their pigeon stretch and their couch stretch in the gym, and Jenni be in the corner like doing multi-lunges going...
Because I was really good at yoga.
She was ridiculously good at yoga. Yeah, and it was like just that time and perseverance, I think. So I think a lesson for everybody of like, especially on your journey, is like, all right, what can I do? And just like, okay, this stuff will help me long term, so I'm going to work on it because like I know, you know, all of us know how frustrating it is doing something you don't want to do, even though it's going to be beneficial for you, and you did that. And that's the most impressive thing that Jenni, every time she came to the gym, it was like, you know, the majority of the week, it was like, okay, we're doing overhead stuff today. And I was like, boom, my shoulder hurts. All right, well, swap you to leg stuff then. And then the next session, it was like, oh, we're doing leg stuff today. Boom, knee hurts. It was like, okay, we'll switch you to upper body stuff today. And I was like, boom, my shoulder, my knee hurts. All right, okay, we're doing core today. So Jenni never just went, oh, no, I'm away home. She always adapted and would change things to what she was doing. And she was still able to get that session. And so she was always training. So just the more you kind of get to know yourself and how to change what you're doing based on how you feel is really good as well, because with something like hypermobility, you're going to pick up owies often. So you need to be able to just go and adapt.
Just need an extreme amount of resilience to go, you know what, this part of it, let's just wiggle our way around.
And that's where I think knowledge comes in handy. I know sometimes we would tell people to not focus on a diagnosis, and I think that's a good message when you use it as a crutch. But to be diagnosed with a hypermobility syndrome, it's not then you don't use it as a crutch. You use it as a knowledge base of like, there's nothing wrong with me. Well, there is, I guess. But
Where to begin?
but I now know this about myself, so I can use this as a foundation to build from, rather than just going, why can't I do this? What, everyone else can do it. What's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I have this knowledge and understanding. That means I need to adapt my training this way, rather than going, I'm clearly just not meant to do this, so I'll just stop.
And I think for a lot of people that don't know where to start, like if you're at that stage where every time you try and do something you hurt yourself, we have just found it like really good to be like, right, basic joint movements, and I'm talking a tin of beans. That's your weight.
Yeah.
That's all we're using. Because for some people, just even using a resistance band is too much too soon. So literally, right, can we move the joint? And it's like, does that feel okay? Feels okay. Even when we're like overextending, going into those ranges that you know you can be told, oh, don't do that. It's like, but you can do that. So I would argue, you know, you don't want to completely avoid it. Maybe not load it up heavy, but yeah, you want to be gradually building these things up over time, so that you're just constantly trying to get your body to adapt and be able to cope with these things. So what you'll start to see is, as they gain more confidence in the movement and the joints feel more stable, they're able to start to then progress on the other things. So there was a girl that worked with me a good long time ago now, and she was the same. She'd got SMM. She was like, I keep tweaking things when I do it. So she got the call, and she'd actually bought 2 of the programs. I was like, look, the call. The Tom signal came up in the sky, and I was like, I'll be there in a minute.
Spotlight swings in.
Literally what we did was those tin of beans, and we just got her doing basic arm, the wall shoulder rotations, got her doing things like that, got her doing things like hip cars first of all, and just the clockwork hips drill, just moving the joints gently. And within a couple of weeks, she was like, I'm feeling much better here day to day. And then we progressed her into things like the deep lunge and building the 1990 up and things like that there afterwards. And then a few weeks later, so after we'd actually finished, like, she was feeling great when we finished. And then she messaged me a few months after, like, got Stability Builder and started doing the workouts in it. And I was like, that's fantastic. So she was doing the jumping work, she was doing coordination plyo, actually jumping and stuff. And like that was only in a couple of months, which I was surprised, because I'm always leaning more towards the cautious side of things, of like, hey, let's go really super slow here, almost so slow that you feel bored, that you're like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything, so we can keep doing stuff. So I'm always like leaning more to that side. So I'm still to this day shocked regularly by how fast progress might happen for some people. And yes, it might be 6 months, but that's still pretty quick. We're talking like taking a year to build stuff up. So if you do that in 6 months, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
You
if
know,
you moved into a new job and had like a skill deficit where you needed to learn it, and you could learn it in 6 months, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Don't even.
Speaking from experience.
You just pipe down there, you cheekers. Like,
one of the things that Jenny also has to work on,
My attitude.
correcting everyone's grammar all the time.
let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something.
So if somebody came to you and they're like, hey Jenny, just discovered I've got this thing. It's called hypermobility. What should I do? Where should I start? Like, what would you recommend?
So, let me get my other notes up. It obviously depends on your goals, but I think generally everyone with hypermobility should move towards lifting weights in some form.
Sure.
Because at the minute, your muscles are focused very much on stabilizing your joints, and if we can get that stability phase underway and progress onto weights, even if you have no interest in building muscle or anything like that, we just need to get those muscles strong, so that stabilizing the joints is so easy that it's not like that's a very small percentage of what those muscles are capable of, rather than the muscle's entire capacity is used up stabilizing those joints.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to progress to, but the very first stage, as Tom was saying, is getting into the end ranges of motion, but learning how to move slowly. Because you see a lot of people with hypermobility, they tend to move erratically.
When they're clicking a mouse?
Maybe. That could be other issues. They tend to move without coordination, and they tend to not necessarily know where they are in space. If you ask them to do something, it might take them a few goes before they work out what it is. So it's deliberately putting them into very deep positions slowly and carefully, and then moving out of them again. Because even you'll see a hypermobile person probably can go into a lovely deep squat. As they come out of it, they probably tip because they don't actually have the strength to lift themselves
Gotcha.
out. So it's all these things. It's like, let's take it back to the most basic level of where can you move to? Do it again, but slower.
Yeah. And if you can't even, how do we assist you
Yes.
into it? Like, so
Yeah.
if you need to literally use your hands to walk yourself back up out of a squat,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's how you can get the reps in.
Squatting at a rig post is something I used to do a lot. Lunges are really, really great, as Tom was saying, with different angles, because we have broad angles that we can reach, so let's explore those. Don't shy away from it. Overhead stability, if you've got the opportunity to learn pull-ups, definitely do. I think they were the best thing to stabilize my shoulders.
Oh, nice.
Was when I got my lats involved, because your lats are ginormous muscles down your back, for me anyway. And
Both of them.
hey, one of my lats is pretty good. And they stabilize your humerus, so it takes a little bit of pressure off the shoulder joint. So building your lats is really, really good if you have shoulder issues. With the ankle stuff, like slow calf raises, they were essential for me, because as Tom was saying, I didn't used to be able to walk really very far at all. So it's focusing in on where your issues are and think, how can I actually put myself into those compromised positions safely, and then we'll start adding strength to those calf raises, adding weight to those lunges or whatever.
And where can you get the reps in?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Because if you do one of something, you're like, that's too hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just stick there. Like see dudes in their 20s are the worst for it. It's like, but I can lift that heavy weight. It's like, you only lift it once. You know, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You got to be like, where can I do at least 10 reps of this? But this feels too easy. And it's like, yes, that's what we want. Because then we can get the reps in. You know, you can start chasing, getting up to doing 50 reps within a set. Or not within a set, within a couple of sets, building yourself up.
So you want them to build
what we're
up
after.
a base level of strength.
Yeah.
So here's a question coming in. Just got to get there. We're not really talking about like muscle mass. It's like strength through the joint.
Yeah.
So when you are doing strength training, a movement like a back squat is primarily focused on the legs, but it'll build muscle everywhere in your body, because increasing muscle, your body just goes like, more. We need more. So with this, we're trying to get them to build strength overall in their joints. Is there carryover from that, from like your moving joints to like connective tissue inside, like for your digestion and stuff like that, or is it pretty much isolated to your movements?
I actually had never thought about that before, but as far as I know, just based on
Science, logic.
science and logic,
No.
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
No.
That's
Like
a
with training, you're improving the load tolerance. So you're working on that specific connective tissue that you're working.
Yeah.
It's going to be very hard to hit the inside.
The most of the advice that I have is for the joints
Yeah, sure.
rather than anything else.
Because you were talking about like when heart pumps
Yeah.
and like the arteries and stuff just expand and they don't have the same like contractibility.
I have very low blood pressure. It's a common thing. A low blood pressure but a high heart rate. Very common combo with hypermobile people, because as far as I assume, have read, but again, it's all a bit wishy-washy. The valves, the arteries, the veins, instead of staying quite, they are stretchy, they're meant to be, but instead of staying fairly solid, they just stretch with the blood.
Yeah.
So it really slows down the blood pressure and causes your heart to work more.
Makes you faint when you stand up too fast.
It does. POTS I did write down what POTS stood for because I couldn't remember it, but we're not going to.
Onset. Tall.
Tipping.
Postural tachycardia syndrome.
That's the one.
Yeah.
See?
So that's what you were just about to say.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
I was just checking.
Yeah, so when you stand up too quickly, you faint, all these kind of things. But you could imagine increasing your cardiovascular health could potentially improve that, just in generally improving your heart health.
Heart's a muscle.
Heart is a muscle, but if it just gets better at pumping through dodgy arteries, I'm not sure whether...
Yeah. Sure.
Need to invent the artery program.
Yeah. I didn't think it would be
knows?
like an easy answer, but it's just...
Yeah, just thought you'd ask.
Yeah.
Why not?
Fair enough.
Are there any kind of supplements that you take or you've heard would be good?
Just the good supplements.
Just the good ones, not the bad ones.
None of those bad ones.
Well, I only take the supplements that Magic gives me in the morning, which who knows what's in those.
He's got a guy.
No, I think they're just vitamins, I think.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. So I do not consistently take any supplements.
Sure.
That's
Not
why
even like creatine or something?
No, because I just don't remember. I just forget. It's not a conscious choice. I just forget to take them, and so I'm not consistent with that. However, what I do automatically...
We're back on number 2s.
We got there. Full circle.
Sorry, what did you do?
What I do is, and this is subconscious, instinctive, I have a lot of water. I drink a lot of water, and I eat a lot of salt. And I only found out in the past couple of years that people with hypermobility are recommended to have a higher salt intake.
There you go.
And they're recommended to have a higher water intake.
Nice.
Those two seem to contradict each other, or counteract
Yeah,
each
because
other.
the more salt, the more water. Yeah. The more,
But apparently that is advice that people with hypermobility have, so I'll pass that on.
Sure.
I find that I perform better if I've eaten something saltier than if I eat something sweeter. Like, I don't quite get that energy boost from sugars. I'd actually feel like I get that more from salt, which is kind of weird.
So in like the low carb circles, so carnivore, paleo, all that kind of stuff, because they're tending to eat very unprocessed foods, there's not much salt in their food, and they would have vast quantities of salt to improve performance.
Interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
ask because I know you don't.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that always bugs me about supplements in general. So I know people would ask, about hypermobility, what supplements should I take? Collagen is one that I've heard can be helpful.
I've heard that.
But in the likes of yourself and like just that idea is like there is bigger fish to fry. Your strength, your mobility, hydration, and yes, salt would be that's the good things you can do every day. So. Don't just go, I'll get a tablet and that'll fix it.
No.
You never have that
Totally.
kind of attitude towards it. So yes, by all means, if you want to try some supplements, definitely try them. Give them a good 3 months and then stop them and see, do I feel different?
Do you instantly feel like a negative, or not instant, but like within a week or so? You feel a negative.
Anything that you are thinking about trying, whatever, give it a good run. Make your own mind up on it. So I think just with anybody really, because like if you look at Jenni, it's like, well, she doesn't take any. Just do it pretty well.
Apart from my mysterious vitamins.
Mysterious vitamins. Weird Polish vitamins.
Vitamin D tells me.
She just faints all the time because she's high. Nothing to do with blood pressure.
That's all it is.
Yeah. So like with those supplements are there to supplement something.
Yes.
They're not a primary source of whatever. Sure.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
I think just as a final closing message, like, would you tell people to be wary of anything? Like, would you say, don't do something?
So that was one of the notes of like what to be wary of or what to avoid. And it's a tricky one because it's like, what?
What to be wary of? Tall, dark people in this corner? Like, just
stranger
everything.
danger.
Scary movies.
Moving fast, overloading, poor movement patterns are things that everyone should be wary of. I guess it's just that you don't have as much wiggle room. But you really just need to get creative. And as we said, you got to focus on what you can do, not what you can't, because there is going to be loads of stuff that you can't do.
Initially.
Or at any given time, you might suddenly find that you're injured, you've dislocated this, that, or the other, and you just suddenly can't do this thing that you love for 6 months. You're going to have to find a way around it, because the alternative is that you get weaker, or that you get frustrated, or all this kind of stuff. And no matter what it is that you choose to do instead of that thing, that's still beneficial.
Yep.
Like, you're never wasting your time. No matter what it is that you're doing. Whenever I couldn't squat, all I wanted to do was squat.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. So as soon as you can't do something, anything else feels like a waste of time, but you're never wasting your time. Whatever it is that you're doing or learning, and even if you're just having to do core because every joint in your body has decided to give up at the same time.
Everyone needs more core.
Exactly.
20 sets of hollow body.
Yeah, it's not wasted.
Awesome, love that. So never not do nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Is that too many knots?
never not.
Never not do nothing.
Check his pros.
That's a limerick.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Wow, that was incredible. I enjoyed that podcast, and I hope you did too. If you'd like to find out more, head over to tommorrison.uk.